The crash of Italian leather hitting marble floor echoed through the exclusive Delta Sky Club at JFK International Airport like a gunshot. Every conversation stopped, every phone call ended. Every businessman looked up from their laptops as Phoenix Martinez stormed across the pristine lounge, his 34-year-old face twisted with fury that would make grown men step aside. His target sat peacefully in the prime leather chair overlooking the runway, an older gentleman with gentle eyes, completely unaware of the storm heading his way. "Are you sitting in my seat, old man?" Phoenix's voice cut through the refined atmosphere like a blade through silk. Everyone in the lounge turned to stare. Phoenix, dressed in designer clothes worth more than most people's cars, spoke loudly with a smile full of contempt. André Rieu, motionless, just looked him in the eyes. Silence. Harmony, the receptionist, hesitated to step between them. But it was River, a 12-year-old boy in a wheelchair by the window, who whispered to himself, "He doesn't know who that is." Phoenix turned his back on Rieu without knowing what was about to happen. 3 minutes later, that same billionaire CEO would be kneeling on the lounge floor with tears streaming down his face, muttering, "What have I done?" And it all started because of a chair and an arrogance that was about to be shattered. Before we continue this incredible life-changing story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and how old you are. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our inspiring stories that can transform your perspective on life. Phoenix was the type of CEO who dominated everything with his voice and his money. Founder of a billion-dollar startup in renewable energy, he was only 34 years old and had a team of executives who worshipped him everywhere he went. But deep down, what he despised most was weakness. For him, kindness was weakness. That morning, he was waiting for his flight to Davos, where he would receive an award for Young Global Influencer. He wore an Italian suit, had a $400,000 watch on his wrist, and a bored expression until he saw an older man sitting in his favorite chair in the lounge. That's when his arrogance took over, and the silent audience, consisting of wealthy travelers, attendants, and an observant boy, would see something that would change the atmosphere in the room. The seated man, however, didn't react. He just stared at him. 10 seconds later, when the truth began to emerge, Phoenix's rage would become shame and his arrogance would become tears. Phoenix was impatient. He couldn't stand the thought of someone simply occupying his exclusive space like the executive lounge at JFK. The whole afternoon was already out of his control. Cancelled meeting, flight delay, and now an older man sitting where he wanted to rest before the trip to Davos. The JFK lounge had always been his refuge. Here, between the glass walls and the soft sound of coffee machines, he felt at home. It was his kingdom, his territory. No one dared to take his space, certainly not without his permission. He walked with heavy steps to the reception. His Italian leather shoes clicked on the marble floor. Harmony, the young receptionist with golden hair and a nervous smile, saw him coming and her heart sank. She knew that look. That look meant trouble. "Harmony," he said without looking at her, his eyes fixed on the man in the corner. "Who let that man in?" "Mr. Phoenix, he has a valid access pass. He is—" "I don't care," he interrupted her. "Look at him. He's not wearing a suit, no briefcase, no laptop. He doesn't belong here." Harmony swallowed. "Sir, I can't just—" "You can," said Phoenix, his voice cold as ice. "And you will. Fix this now." He turned around and walked to the bar, where he ordered a glass of whiskey. But his eyes remained fixed on the man. That man with his gray hair and calm demeanor just sat there with his eyes closed as if the world around him didn't exist. It irritated Phoenix. That peace, that calmness. It was as if the man knew he didn't belong there, but didn't care, as if he was above the rules. Phoenix took a sip of his whiskey and felt the warmth burn through his throat. He was used to getting what he wanted, always, without exception, and today would be no different. He walked toward the man, his footsteps resolute. "Excuse me," he said, his voice polite but with a sharp undertone. "But I believe you're sitting in my spot." The man slowly opened his eyes. They were blue, deep, and calm. He looked at Phoenix without saying a word. "Did you hear me?" asked Phoenix, his patience already wearing thin. "This is my spot. I always sit here." The man smiled, a small, almost invisible smile. "There are many chairs here," he said softly, his voice calm and melodious. Phoenix felt his blood boil. "That's not the point. The point is that this is my place and I want you to leave." The man said nothing. He simply closed his eyes again, as if Phoenix didn't exist. That was the last straw. Phoenix felt his face grow warm, his hands clenching into fists. How dare this man ignore him? How dare he? He turned around and called to Harmony. "Harmony, I told you to fix this." Harmony was already beside him, her hands trembling. "Mr. Phoenix, please. This isn't necessary." "No," he shouted. "This man doesn't belong here. Look at him. He looks like he came from the street." Several people in the lounge looked up. A few businessmen frowned. A woman with a child held her daughter closer, but nobody said anything. Phoenix felt their eyes on him, but he didn't care. He was used to being the center of attention. He thrived on it. "This man has just as much right to be here as you," Harmony said softly, her voice trembling. "What did you say?" asked Phoenix, his eyes narrowing. "I said he's allowed to be here. He paid for access, just like you." Phoenix laughed, a harsh, sharp sound. "Paid? Look at him. He probably doesn't have a cent." At that moment, something moved in the corner of the room. A small sound like a wheel rolling across the floor. Phoenix turned around and saw a boy in a wheelchair slowly coming toward them. It was River, a boy about 12 years old with dark hair and large brown eyes. He held a toy violin in his hands, a small plastic thing that looked like it could break at any moment. "Sir," said River, his voice soft but clear, "do you play violin?" He was addressing the older man, not Phoenix. Phoenix felt a new wave of irritation. "Children don't belong in lounges," he said sharply, "and certainly not with toys." River looked up at him, his eyes large and confused. "But sir, No," Phoenix said, stepping closer. "No buts. Go back to your mother." River's mother, a woman with blonde hair and a worried expression, stood up from her chair and wanted to come toward them. But before she could, something happened. Phoenix, in his frustration and anger, made a sudden movement. His foot in his expensive Italian shoe touched River's wheelchair. Not hard, not enough to hurt the boy, but enough to move the wheelchair a small bit. River's eyes went wide. He grabbed the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white. The toy violin fell from his hands and clattered to the ground. The entire lounge fell silent, deathly silent. Phoenix realized too late what he had done. He looked at the boy, at the fallen violin, at the shocked faces around him. It was an accident," he stammered, but no one was listening. River's mother was already with her son, her arms around him, her face pale. "How dare you?" she whispered, her voice trembling with anger. "How dare you touch my son?" Phoenix took a step back. "It wasn't intentional. I'm leaving," he said, now louder. "Leave us alone," she said, even harder. "Go away from us." Phoenix felt all eyes on him. He felt the condemnation, the disbelief, the disgust, but it was the look of the older man that affected him most. That man, that calm, peaceful man, had opened his eyes again and was looking at Phoenix with a look that wasn't anger. It wasn't disgust. It was something much worse. It was disappointment. Phoenix wanted to say something, do something to fix the situation, but before he could, he heard a voice behind him. "Mr. Phoenix, I think it would be better if you stepped outside for a moment." It was Harmony, her face serious. "Please, for everyone." Phoenix looked around. He saw the faces of the other travelers, all looking at him with the same expression. He was no longer the powerful CEO. He was the villain. He turned around and walked toward the door, his footsteps heavy. But just before he reached the door, he heard a soft voice behind him. "Sir," it was River. The boy had picked up his toy violin again and held it against his chest. "Yes?" Phoenix asked without turning around. "That gentleman there," said River, pointing to the older man. "Do you know who that is?" Phoenix frowned. "No. Who then?" River smiled, a small, sad smile. "That's André Rieu, the world's most famous violinist." The world stopped. Phoenix slowly turned around. He looked at the boy, then at the older man, then back at the boy. "What did you say?" "André Rieu," River repeated. "The violinist, the most famous in all of America." Phoenix felt his knees go weak. He looked again at the man in the corner who was now standing and putting on his coat. It was him. It was really him, and Phoenix had just treated him like a homeless person. Phoenix stood frozen in the doorway. His brain tried to process what he had just heard. André Rieu. The name echoed through his head like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. He knew that name. Everyone knew that name. But he had never been able to place the face. He had always been too busy with his company, his deals, his success. Classical music was something for old people, for weak people. At least, that's what he had always thought. And now, staring at the man who was calmly putting on his coat, Phoenix felt something he hadn't felt in years. Shame. "Mr. Phoenix," Harmony said softly beside him, "maybe you'd like to—" "Be quiet," he snapped, but his voice lacked its usual strength. He watched how André Rieu picked up his bag, a small leather travel bag that looked old, but well-maintained. The man moved with an elegance Phoenix had never noticed. Every movement was precise, purposeful, as if he was performing a silent dance. River rolled his wheelchair toward André, his face beaming. "Mr. Rieu," he said, his voice full of awe. "Are you really here?" André smiled at the boy, a warm, genuine smile. "Yes, young man, I'm really here. My grandpa loves your music," said River. "He plays your CDs every day. He says your music makes him feel like he's young again." André knelt down so he was at eye level with River. "Your grandpa sounds like a wise man," he said. "Music has that power, you know. It can take us back to moments we thought we had forgotten." Phoenix felt a stab in his chest. Those words, they touched something deep in him, something he had buried long ago. His grandpa, his grandfather on his father's side, a man he had barely known, a man who had been cold and distant until he got sick. Phoenix shook his head. This wasn't the time to think about such things. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw a young man entering, dressed in torn jeans and a worn sweater. He carried a violin case on his back and looked like he had been playing on the street all day. "Lance?" Harmony called out, surprised. The young man, Lance, smiled at her. "Hi, Harmony, sorry for disturbing, but I need to deliver something." He walked past Phoenix without even looking at him. Phoenix felt a new wave of irritation. How dare this street musician ignore him? But then he saw where Lance was going, to André Rieu. The two men embraced each other, a long, warm embrace that spoke of genuine friendship. "Lance," said André, his voice full of affection, "what are you doing here?" "You forgot this in the car," said Lance, handing over an envelope. "I thought it might be important." André took the envelope and looked inside. His face softened. "Thank you, my friend. This is indeed important." Phoenix watched, his confusion growing. How did a world-famous musician like André Rieu know a street musician? It didn't make sense. "Mr. Rieu," said Lance, his voice hesitating, "about what we discussed." "Don't worry," said André, his hand on Lance's shoulder. "We'll work it out. You have talent, Lance, real talent, and talent deserves a chance." Lance's eyes became moist. "Thank you, sir. You don't know what this means to me." "I do know," said André softly. "I once started where you are now. We forget that sometimes when we have success, but I never forget it." Phoenix felt something break in his chest. Those words, those simple, sincere words, they were so different from everything he had ever said or heard in his world of business and power. River rolled closer to Lance. "Do you play violin too?" he asked. Lance nodded. "Yes, not as well as Mr. Rieu, but I try." "Could you play for us?" asked River, his eyes full of hope. Lance looked at André, who nodded. "Go ahead, let them hear what you can do." Lance took his violin from the case. It wasn't an expensive instrument. Phoenix could see that. It looked used with scratches and stains. But when Lance began to play, everything changed. The music filled the lounge. A soft melody that was both sad and hopeful at the same time. It wasn't perfect playing. There were small mistakes, moments where the notes weren't quite pure. But there was something in the way Lance played. Something that touched Phoenix in a way he didn't understand. Around him, people stopped what they were doing. A businessman working on his laptop looked up. A woman reading a magazine put it down. Even the barista behind the bar stopped polishing glasses. Everyone listened. When Lance finished, there was a moment of silence. Then the applause began. Not loud, but sincere. River clapped hardest, his face radiant with joy. André placed his hand on Lance's shoulder. "Beautifully played," he said. "You have a gift, use it well." Lance wiped his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Rieu, for everything." Phoenix looked at the scene before him and felt something he couldn't name. It wasn't jealousy, although that was part of it. It wasn't just shame, although that was there too. It was something deeper, something he had locked away long ago. It was longing. Longing for something real, something sincere, something that meant more than money or power. He looked at André Rieu, who was now talking with River, his head bent to better hear the boy. There was no arrogance in his posture, no sense of superiority, only genuine interest and kindness. Phoenix felt his hands trembling. He wanted to say something, do something to make this right. But what? How could you make something like this right? At that moment, his phone rang. He looked at the screen and saw a name he hadn't seen in months. His mother. He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the green button. His mother. He hadn't spoken to her in weeks, maybe months. He was always too busy. Always on the road, always busy with the next big thing. He pressed the red button and put the phone back in his pocket. But when he looked up, he saw that André was watching him, those calm blue eyes that seemed to see everything. And Phoenix knew that André had seen what he had just done. André Rieu's gaze remained on Phoenix, not judging but observing. It was as if the older man could see right through the young CEO's facade to the emptiness underneath. Phoenix turned away. He couldn't look into those eyes anymore. Instead, he looked at his watch, an automatic reaction when he felt uncomfortable. "Your flight doesn't leave for 3 hours, Harmony said softly beside him. "You still have time." "Time for what?" Phoenix snapped, but the sharpness in his voice sounded hollow. "To make it right," she said so quietly that only he could hear. Phoenix looked at her. Harmony had always been the assistant who did everything he asked without questions, but now he saw something different in her eyes. Disappointment. "I don't need to make anything right," he said, but even he didn't believe his own words. In the corner of the lounge, André Rieu was now sitting next to River. The two were deep in conversation. Lance stood next to them, his violin still in his hands, a smile on his face. Phoenix felt a stab of jealousy. How could this street musician have more connection with a world-famous artist than he did? He, Phoenix, the CEO of a billion-dollar company. He walked to the bar and ordered another whiskey. The bartender, a young woman with dark hair, looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. "Been rough?" she asked as she set the glass in front of him. "You have no idea," Phoenix said. "Oh, I think I have some idea," she said, her eyes briefly sliding toward André Rieu. Phoenix took a sip of his whiskey. The liquid burned in his throat, but didn't bring the relief he sought. He thought about his grandpa, his grandfather, whom he had barely known, a man who had worked hard his whole life, who never complained, who never showed weakness, until the illness came. Phoenix remembered the last time he had visited his grandpa in the nursing home. It was shortly before the end. The old man had been lying in bed, his eyes staring at the ceiling, his hands trembling on the sheet, and there had been music playing. Soft, classical music. Violin music. "Who is that?" Phoenix had asked the nurse. "André Rieu," she had answered. "Your grandpa always asks for it. It's the only thing that still calms him." Phoenix hadn't thought much of it then. It was just music, just sound. But now, staring at the man himself, he realized what he had missed. It wasn't just music. It was a connection, a memory, a moment of peace in a life that had been reduced to pain and confusion. And he, Phoenix, had just treated that man like trash. Mr. Phoenix. He turned around and saw River's mother standing there. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but now those eyes were hard. "Yes?" Phoenix said, his voice defensive. "I think you owe my son an apology," she said, her voice calm but firmly determined. "I already said it was an accident," Phoenix began. "An accident?" she interrupted him. "You touched his wheelchair on purpose. I saw it. Everyone saw it." Phoenix felt his face grow warm. "I was frustrated. It wasn't my intention to..." "To what? To make my son afraid? To make him feel like he's not welcome? That's not fair." Phoenix had no answer, because she was right. He knew she was right. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice barely more than a whisper. The woman looked at him for a long time. "Don't say it to me," she said. "Say it to him." She turned around and walked back to her son. Phoenix stood there, his whiskey forgotten in his hand. He felt small, smaller than he had felt in years. "You should go to him," said a voice beside him. It was Lance, the street musician. He had put his violin back in the case and was now standing next to Phoenix at the bar. "Why should I?" Phoenix asked, more out of habit than genuine interest. "Because it's the right thing to do," Lance said simply. "And who are you to tell me what's right?" Phoenix snapped. Lance smiled, a sad smile. "Nobody. I'm nobody. Just a street musician trying to get by. But I know what it's like to be made small, to be treated like you're worth nothing." Phoenix looked at him. "And yet, you played for us. Why?" "Because Mr. Rieu taught me that music isn't about ego. It's about connection, about touching something in people that's bigger than ourselves." "Beautiful words," Phoenix said sarcastically, "but words don't pay the bills." "No," Lance admitted, "but they give meaning to life, and that's worth more than all the money in the world." Phoenix wanted to say something back, but at that moment he heard a sound that made him freeze. It was music, violin music. He turned around and saw André Rieu standing, his violin under his chin, playing for River and the other people in the lounge. The melody was magnificent, so beautiful that it hurt to listen to. It was as if every note touched an emotion Phoenix didn't even know he had. He saw River's face, radiant with pure joy. He saw the boy's mother with tears in her eyes but smiling. He saw other travelers stop what they were doing, drawn to the music like moths to a flame. And he felt something break in his chest, something he had locked away long ago, something he thought he no longer needed. It was sadness. Sadness for everything he had lost in his pursuit of success. Sadness for the man he had become. When the music stopped, there was applause, loud and sincere. André Rieu bowed slightly, his face calm. Then he looked directly at Phoenix. "Music has the power to heal," he said, his voice carrying through the quiet lounge. "But only if we open ourselves to what it wants to teach us." Phoenix felt all eyes on him. He wanted to run, escape this situation he couldn't control, but his feet wouldn't move. Instead, he heard himself ask, And what does it want to teach me? André smiled, a sad smile. That depends on you, sir. Are you willing to listen? Before Phoenix could answer, his phone rang again. This time it was a message from his mother. Your grandpa would have been 90 today. I just wanted to say I'm thinking of him and of you. I hope you're doing well, sweetheart. Call me if you can. Phoenix stared at the message, his hands trembling. His grandpa, 90 years old, he had passed away 3 years ago. And Phoenix hadn't even attended the funeral. Too busy with work, he had said. Too many obligations. But the truth was that he had been afraid to feel, afraid to show weakness. He looked up and saw André Rieu, still watching him. Those calm, wise eyes that seemed to understand everything. And for the first time in years, Phoenix felt tears sting behind his eyes. What have I done? He whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. But André heard it, and he smiled. Phoenix stood there in the middle of the lounge with his phone in his hand and tears threatening to come. Around him were the sounds of daily life, the hum of conversations, the sound of coffee machines, announcements of flights over the loudspeakers. But for him, only that moment existed, that realization. André Rieu carefully put down his violin and walked toward Phoenix. His movements were slow, thoughtful, as if he were approaching a wounded animal. Sir, André said softly when he stood in front of Phoenix, it's never too late to make the right choice. Phoenix looked up, his eyes red. You don't understand. I understand more than you think, André interrupted him gently. I see a man who has locked himself in a cage of success and expectations, a man who has forgotten what it means to be human. How do you know that? Phoenix whispered. Because I was once the same man, André said. When I was young, I thought music was only about perfection, about being the best, about recognition and fame. I forgot why I started playing. He pointed to River, who was still sitting in his wheelchair, his face full of expectation. And then I met people like him, people who reminded me what really matters. Phoenix followed his gaze. He saw River, small and vulnerable, but with eyes full of light. He saw the boy's mother, protective but also hopeful. He saw Lance, the street musician, who was now standing next to them, his violin pressed against his chest as if it were his most precious possession, and he felt something shift in his chest. I don't know how to make this right, he said, his voice broken. Start with the truth, André said. Go to that boy and tell him what's really in your heart. Phoenix hesitated. Every fiber in his body screamed that he should run away, escape, return to his comfortable world where he had control. But there was something in André's eyes, something that made him stay. He nodded slowly and walked toward River. The boy looked up at him, his face now cautious. His mother came closer, protectively placing her hand on River's shoulder. River? Phoenix began, his voice uncertain. I need to tell you something. The boy said nothing, just waited. What I did was wrong. Touching your wheelchair wasn't an accident. I was angry and frustrated, and I took it out on you, and that's unforgivable. River's mother looked at him sharply, but River himself seemed to think about his words. Why were you angry? River finally asked. The question surprised Phoenix. I don't know. Because things weren't going the way I wanted. Because I thought I had control. And then it turned out that wasn't the case. My mama says that anger is often sadness in disguise, River said. Phoenix felt a new wave of tears. Your mama is a wise woman. Yes, she is, River said with a small smile. Phoenix knelt down, so he was at eye level with the boy. River, I can't undo what I did, but I want to promise you that I'll try to be a better person. A person who treats people like you with the dignity you deserve. River looked at him for a long time. Then he extended his hand. Okay, he said simply. Phoenix took the small hand in his and felt something warm flow through him. It was forgiveness, he realized. Pure, unconditional forgiveness from a child. He stood up, his knees cracking. His expensive suit was wrinkled from kneeling on the ground, but he didn't care. He turned to André Rieu. Mr. Rieu, But before he could continue, André took something from his inner pocket. It was a small old notebook, worn at the edges. This, André said, handing it to Phoenix, is something I always carry with me. It reminds me of where I come from. Phoenix carefully took the notebook and opened it. Inside he found notes, sketches, lists of songs, and on the first page, written in refined handwriting, music is not what we hear but what we feel. My father wrote that, André said softly, when Phoenix began with violin. He wanted me to understand that technique is important, but emotion is everything. Phoenix stared at the words. Why are you giving this to me? Because I think you need to remember, André said, that success is not measured in money or power, but in the lives we touch, in the moments we choose to be good instead of right. Phoenix wanted to give the notebook back, his hands trembling. I don't know if I can do that. Nobody knows that in the beginning, André said with a smile. But the first step is acknowledging that you have the choice. At that moment, Harmony came toward them. Mr. Phoenix, your flight to Davos has been called for boarding. Phoenix looked at her, then at André, then at River. Davos, the prize, the recognition, everything he had worked toward. But suddenly it all seemed so empty. Harmony, he said slowly, cancel my flight. What? She looked shocked. But sir, the award can wait, Phoenix said decisively. Or not come at all. I don't care. He took out his phone and called a number. Mother, yes, it's me. I got your message about Grandpa. I want to talk. May I come over? On the other side of the line there was silence. Then a muffled sob. Of course, sweetheart. Come as soon as you can. Phoenix hung up and looked around at the lounge. Mr. Rieu, would you come with me to my mother? I think she would appreciate meeting you. She loved Grandpa, and he loved your music. André looked surprised. I don't know if that's appropriate. Please, Phoenix said. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm only asking for a chance to make something right, to let my mother see that I understand now, that I understand what that music meant to Grandpa. André looked at Lance, who nodded. Go, Lance said. This is important. André turned back to Phoenix. All right then, but only if River and his mother can come too. Phoenix looked at the boy and his mother. Would you like to? River's mother hesitated, but River's face lit up. Yes, may we, Mama? She sighed but smiled. All right then. And so, half an hour later, they were all sitting in Phoenix's luxury car, heading to his mother's house in the suburbs of New York. André Rieu in front, Lance, River, and his mother behind him. It was a strange group, but as they drove, Phoenix felt something that resembled peace for the first time in years. The car glided through the streets of New York, past canals and old buildings that gleamed in the afternoon light. Phoenix sat behind the wheel, his hands firm on the leather, his eyes focused on the road but his thoughts far away. Next to him sat André Rieu, quiet and calm, his hands folded in his lap. In the back seat were Lance, River, and his mother, talking softly with each other. It was a strange, unlikely group, but there was something peaceful in their collective presence. Tell me about your grandpa, André said suddenly, breaking the silence. Phoenix hesitated. He was a hard man, he began slowly. Stern. He rarely smiled and talked even less. My whole youth I was afraid of him. But you loved him, André said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Phoenix admitted, even though I didn't understand him, even though he never let me get close. What happened when he got sick? Phoenix's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He changed. Or maybe he didn't change. Maybe I finally saw him as he really was. The illness took away all defenses, all the walls he had built up, and what remained was fear, confusion, and a longing for something he had denied his whole life. Comfort, André said softly. Yes, Phoenix whispered. And he found that in your music. There was silence again. Then André said, You know, I often receive letters from people who tell me that my music has helped them through difficult times. Sometimes I think that's the most important thing I do. Not the concerts for thousands of people, but the quiet moments when someone is alone with their pain and my music lets them breathe for a moment. Phoenix felt tears sting his eyes. I never thanked him for everything he did for me. I was always so busy with my own life, my own ambitions, and then he was gone. It's never too late to show gratitude, André said. Not to him, maybe, but to others who knew him, to your mother, to yourself. They arrived at a small, neat house on the edge of the city. It had a garden full of flowers and a red front door that looked inviting. Phoenix parked the car, and they all got out. River's mother helped her son into his wheelchair, and they walked together to the front door. Before Phoenix could ring the bell, the door opened. His mother stood there, a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes that went wide when she saw the group. Phoenix, she said, confused. What is all this? Mother, Phoenix said, his voice trembling. This is André Rieu, and these are my friends. His mother's mouth fell open. André Rieu, the violinist. André stepped forward and bowed slightly. Ma'am, it's an honor. Oh my heavens, she whispered. Come in, come all in. They walked into a cozy house full of photos and memories. Phoenix saw photos of his grandpa everywhere, a reminder of the man he had been before illness had changed him. Mother, Phoenix began while they sat in the living room, I got your message about Grandpa's birthday. Yes, his mother said softly, her eyes sliding to the photo of her father. He would have been 90 today. I miss him every day. Me too, Phoenix said, and he realized with a shock that it was true. He had thought he had no emotion left for the old man, but now, in this house full of memories, he felt the pain of loss. Ma'am, André Rieu said softly, Your son told me that your father loved my music. Oh yes, she said, her face lighting up. In the nursing home, especially at the end, it was the only thing that calmed him. The nurses said he always smiled when they played your CDs. André nodded. Would it be all right if I played something for him? As a tribute, Phoenix's mother burst into tears. Would you do that? Oh, that would have made him so happy. André took out his violin, which he had been carrying with him all along. He tuned it carefully, his movements precise and purposeful. Then he began to play. The music filled the small house, a soft, melancholy melody that was both sad and comforting at the same time. It was a song about loss and memory, about love that continues even after departure. Phoenix looked at his mother and saw tears streaming down her cheeks. He looked at River, who was listening with wide eyes, his small hands folded in his lap. He looked at Lance, who had taken out his own violin and was softly playing along, his face a mask of concentration. And he felt his own tears come, unstoppable now. He thought of his grandpa, of the man he had never really known. He thought of all the missed opportunities, all the conversations they had never had, all the moments he had let pass because he was too busy, too focused on his own goals. But he also thought of this moment, of the beauty of it, of the unexpected kindness of strangers, of the power of music to heal what was broken. When the song ended, there was a long silence. No one moved, no one spoke. Finally, it was River who broke the silence. That was beautiful, he whispered. Do you think Grandpa heard it? Phoenix's mother smiled through her tears. I'm sure he did, sweetheart. André put down his violin and looked at Phoenix. There's something else you should see, he said. He took out the envelope that Lance had given him earlier. Lance found this in my car. It's a letter I received years ago from a man in a nursing home. He wrote me to thank me for my music, for the way it had helped him through his darkest days. He handed the letter to Phoenix. Read the name at the bottom. Phoenix opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, he found a letter written in a shaky handwriting. He read the words, emotions rising in his throat, and then he saw the signature, Roberto Martinez, his grandpa's name. He wrote me 3 months before he died, André said softly. He told me about his grandson, a young man full of ambition and talent. He said he hoped his grandson would learn that success is not measured in what you achieve, but in how you treat others. Phoenix couldn't anymore. He sank to his knees, the letter still in his hands, and cried. He cried for his grandpa, for the relationship they had never had. He cried for the man he had become, for the emptiness he had allowed in his heart. He cried for all the missed chances and all the pain he had caused. His mother knelt next to him, her arms around him. It's okay, she whispered. It's okay, my boy. River rolled his chair toward them. Mr. Phoenix, he said softly, my grandpa says that crying isn't weak. It means your heart still works. Phoenix looked up at the boy, his face wet with tears. Your grandpa is a wise man, just like mine was, he said. River smiled, just like yours. Slowly, Phoenix stood up, supported by his mother. He looked at André Rieu, who was smiling at him with understanding and compassion. Thank you, Phoenix said, for everything, for showing me what I had lost, for reminding me what's important. It wasn't me, André said. It was the music, and it was your grandpa who, even after his death, was still trying to reach you. In the days that followed, many things happened. The story of what had happened in the JFK lounge didn't spread as a scandal, but as an inspiration. Someone had recorded it on their phone and the video went viral. Powerful CEO learns lesson in humility from world-famous violinist, read the headlines. But it wasn't the public attention that mattered to Phoenix. It was what changed inside him. He didn't go to Davos. Instead, he spent a week with his mother, going through boxes full of photos and memories of his grandpa. He learned things about the man he had never known, his love for gardening, his quiet acts of kindness to neighbors, his passion for music that he had never been able to express. He also met with River and his mother again. He established a foundation to support families of children in wheelchairs, and he made sure River had tickets to every André Rieu concert in America, and he reached out to Lance, the street musician. I want to help you, he said, not out of charity, but because your talent deserves to be recognized. Let me sponsor you for the conservatory. Lance cried when he heard the offer, and Phoenix cried with him. A month later, Phoenix sat in a small cafe in New York, his laptop closed in front of him. He had not given up his CEO position, but he had changed the way he led. More attention to people, less to profits, more compassion, less control. His phone rang. It was an unknown number. With Phoenix, he said. Mr. Martinez, said a voice on the other side. This is the concert hall. Mr. Rieu asked us to call you. He's giving a special concert next month, a tribute to people who have been touched by music. He would very much like you and your mother to be in the front row. Phoenix felt tears welling up. "We'll be there," he said. "And thank Mr. Rieu for everything." That evening, sitting with his mother, he told her about the concert. She held his hand and smiled. "Grandpa would have been so proud," she said. "Do you think so?" Phoenix asked. "I know it," she said. "Not because of your success or your money, but because of the man you're becoming now." Phoenix leaned back and closed his eyes. Somewhere in the quiet part of his mind, he heard music, violins, and he smiled. In the nursing home where his grandpa had spent his last years, the head nurse had a small office. On her desk stood a framed photo of the day André Rieu had visited the home years ago. In the photo stood a young man next to him, his face beaming. It was Roberto Martinez, Phoenix's grandpa, and on the back of the photo, written in his shaky handwriting, was a single sentence: "The music never ends. It just waits for someone who wants to listen." Phoenix had finally learned to listen, and in that listening he had found himself again. 3 months later, River stood on the stage of the Lincoln Center, his wheelchair gleaming under the lights. In his hands, he held a real violin, not the toy he had had in the lounge. André Rieu stood next to him, his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Ladies and gentlemen," André said into the microphone, "tonight we celebrate not just music. We celebrate the power of forgiveness, of connection, of remembering what's really important." He nodded to River, who placed his violin under his chin. With trembling but determined hands, he began to play. It wasn't perfect. There were false notes and uncertain moments, but it was beautiful. Beautiful because it was sincere. Beautiful because it came from the heart. In the front row sat Phoenix and his mother, hand in hand. Next to them sat Lance, now a student at the conservatory, his face glowing with pride for his young friend. When the piece ended, the entire audience stood up. The applause thundered through the hall, not just for the music, but for what it represented. André Rieu bowed, then helped River bow. The boy's face radiated pure joy, and somewhere in the silence between the notes, Phoenix felt the presence of his grandpa, not as a ghost or a spirit, but as a memory of love, of connection, of lessons that continue even after departure. He leaned toward his mother and whispered, "I understand it now." "What do you understand?" she asked. "Why Grandpa loved the music. It wasn't about the notes or the melodies. It was about what they made him feel, connected, alive, human." His mother smiled, tears in her eyes. "He would have been so happy that you finally understand that." That night, when Phoenix came home to his apartment, he went to his desk. He took out an old box that he had put away months ago, too painful to look at. Inside, he found a cassette, old and worn. On the label, written in blue ink, it said, "For Phoenix, from Grandpa." He had never played it. He hadn't been able to bear it. But now, with everything that had happened, he felt ready. He found an old cassette player in a closet and put the cassette in it. With trembling hands, he pressed play. There was static, then a voice, his grandpa's voice, weak but clear. "Phoenix," the voice said, "if you're hearing this, I'm probably gone. There are so many things I wanted to tell you, so many lessons I wanted to share, but I was always too proud, too afraid to show weakness." There was a pause, the sound of breathing. "So instead I give you this, music, not because I want you to become a violinist, but because I want you to understand what music taught me. That beauty comes from vulnerability. That strength comes from accepting our weaknesses. That love comes from opening our heart, even when it hurts." Phoenix felt tears streaming down his cheeks. "Don't be like I was, grandson. Don't be afraid to feel, to love, to be human. Because in the end, when everything has fallen away, that's the only thing that remains. Not your successes or your possessions, but the lives you've touched and the love you've shared." The voice stopped, and then music began to play. Violin music. André Rieu. Phoenix sat there, listening, crying, but also smiling, because for the first time he understood. He understood his grandpa, he understood himself, he understood what really mattered. And in that understanding, he found peace. The next morning he woke up with a feeling of clarity he hadn't felt in years. He picked up his phone and started typing. It was a message to all his employees, to everyone in his company. "Today something new begins. Not a new product or a new strategy, but a new way of being. From now on, our company will not only be measured by our profits, but by the positive impact we have on the world, by the lives we improve, the people we help, the connections we make." He pressed send and felt a weight fall off his shoulders. Later that day, he visited the nursing home where his grandpa had lived. He spoke with the nurses, learned about the challenges they faced, the limited resources they had. "I want to help," he said, "not just with money, but with my time, my energy, my dedication. Tell me what you need." The head nurse, the same woman who had the photo of André Rieu on her desk, looked at him with surprise. "Are you the same man who was here months ago and could barely stay 5 minutes?" she asked. "No," Phoenix said honestly. "I'm not the same man, and I'm grateful for that." She smiled. "Your grandpa would be so proud." "I hope so," Phoenix said. "I really hope so." And so, slowly but surely, Phoenix's life changed. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but in small, meaningful steps. He learned to listen instead of always talking. He learned to give instead of always taking. He learned that real strength comes from vulnerability and real success from connection. He kept in touch with River and his mother, became a kind of older brother to the boy. He funded Lance's education and watched him grow into a talented musician. He visited his own mother every week, spending hours talking and laughing and remembering. And every evening, before going to bed, he played his grandpa's cassettes. Sometimes he cried, sometimes he smiled, but always he felt the connection, the love that had survived death. Years later, Phoenix received a letter from Lincoln Center. André Rieu was inviting him to a private concert, a small, intimate event for people who had personally touched the violinist. Phoenix went, his heart full of anticipation. When he arrived, he found a small group of people. River and his mother, Lance, several others he didn't know. André greeted him warmly. "Phoenix, nice that you could come. I wouldn't have missed it for anything in the world," Phoenix said. The concert was beautiful, intimate, and emotional. But the most beautiful moment came at the end, when André asked River to play with him. The boy, now 15 and much more confident in his playing, rolled to the center of the room. He placed his violin under his chin and nodded to André. Together they began to play. It was the song Phoenix's grandpa had loved most, the song that was on the cassette, the song that had brought them all together in that airport lounge years ago. As they played, Phoenix closed his eyes and let the music wash over him. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from that angry, bitter man in the airport to this person who had learned to love, to forgive, to truly live. When the last note faded away, Phoenix opened his eyes to find that every person in the room was crying. Not tears of sadness, but tears of joy, of connection, of shared humanity. André put down his violin and looked around the room. "Music," he said softly, "has the power to transform us, not just as individuals, but as a community. It reminds us that despite our differences, we are all connected by something beautiful and eternal." After the concert, Phoenix found himself alone with André for a moment. "Thank you," Phoenix said, his voice thick with emotion, "for that day in the airport, for changing my life." André smiled. "You changed your own life, Phoenix. I just played the music." "But what if I hadn't been ready to hear it?" "Then the music would have waited," André replied. "Music is patient. It knows when we're ready to listen." As Phoenix drove home that night, he thought about all the changes in his life. His company was now one of the most ethical and employee-friendly in the industry. His foundation had helped thousands of disabled children access music education. His relationship with his mother had never been stronger. But perhaps most importantly, he had learned to see the world differently. Where once he had seen only opportunities for profit or advancement, he now saw opportunities to help, to heal, to connect. He pulled into his driveway and sat for a moment in the quiet car. Through his living room window, he could see the display case on his mantel, the one containing River's repaired toy violin. It had become the centerpiece of his home, a daily reminder of the power of forgiveness and the possibility of redemption. Inside the house, he went to his study and opened the desk drawer where he kept his grandpa's letter. He had read it hundreds of times, but it still moved him to tears. That night, as he did every night, Phoenix called his mother before bed. "How was the concert?" she asked. "Beautiful," he said. "Grandpa would have loved it." "He did love it," she said softly. "I believe he was there listening." After they hung up, Phoenix sat in the darkness of his study, surrounded by photos of the people who had changed his life. River, Lance, André, his mother, even Harmony from the airport, who had become a close friend. On his desk was a new project he'd been working on, a book about his experience, about the power of music to heal and transform. He'd tentatively titled it, "The Music Never Ends." As he wrote the final chapters, Phoenix reflected on how different his life could have been if he had never met André Rieu that day. He shuddered to think of the hollow, empty existence he would have continued living, rich in money, but poor in spirit. The book would be published in 6 months, with all proceeds going to music education programs for disabled children. It wasn't about making money or gaining fame. It was about sharing the message that had saved him, that it's never too late to change, to grow, to become the person you were always meant to be. In the weeks following the private concert, Phoenix made a decision that surprised even him. He announced that he would be stepping down as CEO of Solar Nova Industries to focus full-time on his foundation work. The company was in good hands with his carefully trained leadership team, and he trusted them to continue his vision of ethical, sustainable business practices. His last day at the office was emotional. Hundreds of employees gathered in the lobby to see him off, not because he was leaving, but because they wanted to thank him for transforming their workplace into something special, a company that truly cared about its people and its impact on the world. Harmony, who had been promoted to head of human resources, presented him with a gift from the staff. It was a small sculpture of a violin, made from recycled solar panel materials. The inscription read, "To Phoenix Martinez, who taught us that true leadership means lifting others up." As Phoenix held the sculpture, he thought about that angry man who had confronted André Rieu in the airport lounge. That person seemed like a stranger now, someone from another lifetime. The transformation had been gradual but complete. On his way home that evening, Phoenix stopped by the nursing home where his grandfather had lived. The head nurse, Mrs. Chen, greeted him warmly. She had become like family to him over the years. "Your usual room?" she asked with a smile. Phoenix nodded. Every month he came here to play violin music for the residents. He wasn't skilled enough to play himself, but he brought recordings of André Rieu's concerts and spent hours sitting with the elderly residents, many of whom suffered from dementia or other illnesses that had robbed them of their memories. But music, Phoenix had learned, reached beyond memory. It touched something deeper, something eternal in the human spirit. He had watched countless residents who rarely spoke or moved suddenly brighten when the music began, their faces lighting up with recognition and joy. Today, he spent time with Margaret, a 93-year-old woman who had been a pianist before arthritis claimed her ability to play. As André Rieu's version of Ave Maria filled the room, Margaret began to move her fingers as if she were playing along on an invisible keyboard. "She was beautiful," Margaret whispered, tears in her eyes. "The music was always so beautiful." Phoenix held her hand as they listened together, and he thought about the miracle of music, its ability to transcend time and pain and loneliness, to remind us of our shared humanity. After leaving the nursing home, Phoenix drove to Lincoln Center, where River was rehearsing with the youth orchestra. The boy was now 17, a senior in high school, with a full scholarship to Juilliard waiting for him in the fall. Phoenix slipped into the back of the rehearsal hall and watched as River played a solo passage. The music was technically perfect, but more than that, it was filled with soul. River had never lost that quality that had so impressed André Rieu, the ability to play from the heart. During a break, River wheeled over to Phoenix, his face beaming. "Did you hear? André is coming to my graduation recital next month," River said, his excitement infectious. "That's wonderful," Phoenix replied. "He's so proud of how far you've come." "We all are," River said, suddenly serious. "I mean, look at everything that's happened because of that day at the airport. Your foundation has helped over 10,000 kids now. Lance just got his first recording contract. My mum went back to school and got her nursing degree, and you—" River paused, studying Phoenix's face. "You found yourself again." Phoenix felt tears threatening. "We all found ourselves, I think." That evening, Phoenix attended a board meeting for his foundation. The organization had grown far beyond what he had originally envisioned. They now had chapters in 12 states, partnerships with major music conservatories, and a waiting list of thousands of children eager to participate in their programs. As he looked around the conference table at his fellow board members, including River's mother, Serenity, who served as the foundation's director of family services, and Lance, who was now their youth outreach coordinator, Phoenix marveled at how interconnected their lives had become. "I have an announcement," said Dr. Patricia Williams, the foundation's executive director. "We've just received a major grant from the European Music Foundation. André Rieu personally recommended us for the funding." The room erupted in applause and cheers. This grant would allow them to expand their programs internationally, bringing music education to disabled children around the world. After the meeting, Phoenix drove to his mother's house for their weekly dinner. She was waiting for him on the porch, a warm smile on her face. "You look happy," she observed as he kissed her cheek. "I am happy," Phoenix realized, somewhat surprised by the simplicity of the statement. Truly happy. Over dinner, they talked about the foundation's new grant, about River's upcoming recital, about Lance's recording contract. But mostly they talked about Roberto, Phoenix's grandfather, and how proud he would be of the man his grandson had become. "I found something today," his mother said, disappearing into the other room. She returned with an old photo album. "I was going through some of Papa's things and I found this." She opened the album to a page Phoenix had never seen before. There, in a faded photograph, was his grandfather as a young man, holding a violin. "He played?" Phoenix asked, stunned. "Beautifully," his mother said. "But when he came to America, he had to sell his violin to buy food for the family. He never played again, but he never stopped loving music. That's why André Rieu's CDs meant so much to him. They reminded him of his dreams." Phoenix stared at the photograph, understanding flooding through him. The music had been in his family all along, waiting through generations to be rediscovered. His grandfather had passed down more than just memories. He had passed down a love for music that had ultimately saved Phoenix's soul. That night, Phoenix called André Rieu. They had maintained a friendship over the years, bonding over their shared commitment to bringing music to those who needed it most. "André," Phoenix said when the violinist answered, "I wanted to thank you again, not just for that day at the airport, but for everything that's come since." "My friend," André replied, "the thank you should go to you. You took the music and made it into something beautiful. Your foundation, your transformation, the lives you've touched. That's the real magic. I found out today that my grandfather played violin." Phoenix told him about the photograph, about his grandfather's sacrifice. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then André said softly, "The music runs in your family, Phoenix. It was always meant to find you." "I think you're right," Phoenix said. "I think everything that happened was meant to happen exactly the way it did." As they ended their call, Phoenix felt a deep sense of peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help others, new chances to make a difference in the world. But tonight he was simply grateful. Grateful for second chances, for the power of forgiveness, for the magic of music, and for the unexpected ways that love can transform our lives. He went to his study one last time before bed and opened his grandfather's letter. At the bottom, in addition to Roberto's signature, Phoenix had added his own words years ago. "The music never ends, Grandpa. I'm listening now." And as he turned off the lights and headed upstairs, Phoenix could swear he heard the faint sound of violin music drifting through the house, not from any recording or radio, but from somewhere deeper, somewhere eternal, reminding him that love transcends death, that redemption is always possible, and that the most beautiful music of all is the symphony of human kindness that plays on forever in the hearts of those who choose to listen. In his bedroom, Phoenix kept one final reminder of that transformative day, the boarding pass for the Davos flight he never took, framed and hanging on his wall. It served as a daily reminder of the path not taken, the man he chose not to remain, and the infinite possibilities that open up when we choose love over pride, connection over control, and music over silence. The music would indeed never end. It would continue to play in the laughter of the children his foundation helped, in the performances of talented young musicians like River and Lance, in the peaceful faces of nursing home residents lost in melody, and in the grateful hearts of everyone who had discovered, as Phoenix had, that the greatest success in life isn't measured in dollars or awards, but in the love we give and the lives we touch along the way. And somewhere in the eternal symphony of human connection, Roberto Martinez's violin was playing again, not in his hands, but in the legacy of compassion his grandson had created, proving that some music is so powerful it can bridge the gap between generations, between strangers, between who we are and who we're meant to become.